Hi there. I'm Don Samulack, President, U.S. Operations of Editage, an English language services provider, and I'm here today at Walters Kluwer in Philadelphia talking with Dr. Ann Woods, who's Chief Nurse, and Shawn Kennedy, the Editor-in-Chief of American Journal of Nursing. Hi there.
Hi.
So, a couple things that come to mind is one is confidentiality, and getting back to the content management system aspect of things. Everything that you mentioned of all the people that it goes to, the peer reviewers and all the hands it touches, one of the fascinating things is it never leaves this content management system, and it is worked on within the system. So confidentiality is ultimately at the core of the process.
Right.
And are there other things that the author needs to know about do's and don'ts in submitting a manuscript? What are the flags that you've seen over the years? What are the suggestions you can offer to an author?
Well, the biggest issue is that many of the authors that we find don't really read the author or follow the author guidelines. They'll write a paper and then submit it, and we have guidelines on how it should be formatted. Not only just because it meets APA standards and guidelines for scholarly work, but reviewers get to review things that they get used to a certain way of reviewing things. And if people don't take care in what they submit, and it has typos in it and misspellings, and they don't follow the format, it sort of hints at sloppy work. So then you wonder, well, can I really trust everything they're saying? So to have an email that addresses another journal, which I've had, dear editor, I want to submit my manuscript to the journal, and it's not my journal. And I know they're just sending things out. So I think for the biggest thing for authors is this is your presentation of your work, and it should be the best presentation. It shouldn't have errors, and it should be according to guidelines, because that's telling me you really want to be published in my journal, and it's telling me that you're very careful and detailed in your work. So that's like a big flag for me.
One of the things that in Editage we do a lot of educational workshops for authors on best writing practices, and one of the things we often profess is that the manuscript in itself is for the author. It's the author's manuscript. But what they're writing the manuscript for, it's not necessarily the end audience. They're writing that manuscript for the peer reviewer. And the cover letter, the manuscript, the format, the following the instructions for author, all of this dance is to impress upon the peer reviewer, because those are the two or three gatekeepers that are going to either prevent this paper from being published or are going to allow this paper to be published. Right. So all effort from square one needs to be to impress the peer reviewers. And if you impress the peer reviewers, then your paper will be successful.
The other piece is that they need to look at the journal, because it's clear sometimes that they have never even looked at the journal and don't know what type of articles we do, or even the style or tone or level of detail. So they need to review a couple copies of the journal and see, well, is this the right journal for what I'm writing? And the other aspect that we're getting now is many universities are requiring students to write papers and then telling them, okay, you should submit this paper. We get the actual paper that they wrote for the class. So, and student papers are very different from journal articles. Student papers are written to show the professor what you've learned or what experience you've had. And journal articles have to be written with the reader in mind. Readers are experienced and busy clinicians. They don't necessarily care about everything you learned. They want to know, okay, what's the new information I need for my practice? So it's a very different paper that you would write as a student for your professor than you would write for a journal article. So I would say to authors who are looking to publish a paper that they wrote, or I've gotten complete doctoral dissertations submitted too, but is to take what you learned from that paper, or take the nugget from your dissertation and say, okay, here's what the nurses in practice need to know.
That's right.
So that's the most important thing. Are you addressing the needs and the mission and vision of this journal in the way that they do it?
And I would just like to add, I think Shawn brings up a really good point. When you write for publication, you're writing to change practice and improve patient outcomes. And you have to write differently than you do to impress your professor. So it's really key that the authors do that. And back to what Shawn was saying about all the work that AJN does on a manuscript. AJN is very different than the majority of every other journal that's out there. And that's why it's so important to use a system like Editage, who can really help an author, or an author who is new, or an author whose English language is not their first language, to really work with the author on making it the best possible publication. Because as you said, Don, if it doesn't pass muster past the peer reviewers, it will not go further. And it has to be written well. There needs to be rigor behind it. It needs to be written without typos. It needs to be a nice, concise, clean manuscript that no matter who you are, you can read it and understand it. And that's why working with a group like Editage is so important.
And in transparency, Wolters Kluwer and Editage has a relationship and a co-branded author services site where language editing and transcription, translation, and other services are offered at, so it's wkauthorservices.com. But that, I think, was a great analysis of what the authors really need to think about when submitting and what is actually the machinery behind the submission. And so we'll bring closure to this video vignette on that note. And this is one of several, as we're here discussing with Dr. Ann Woods, Chief Nurse at Wolters Kluwer, and Shawn Kennedy, the Editor-in-Chief, American Journal of Nursing. I'm Don Samulack, President, U.S. Operations of Editage. Look for more videos.